Hello and good morning, everyone. We'll let you have a second to get settled, but while you are, just a friendly reminder that we are here with the fabulous, the notorious, the over 4.5 million YouTube video viewed YouTube host of the DB Tech channel, David Burgess. And he is going to be talking to us all about his home use of Portainer, how he's managing his stack, and a lot of other really interesting things about sharing tech tips on the internet. And oh, hey, cool, great. I can see that we've got a lot of folks let in now. Hello, good morning. If you are here, let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from. If you have any questions as they come up throughout the chat, I will be taking them and directing them to our lovely panelists today. And as a special bonus and a new addition for our community chats, we're going to be giving away some limited edition Portainer swag. So if you're feeling particularly bold, please raise your hand and the lovely Diane below me to my left or to my right, depending on how you're looking at this screen, will let you in and you can ask your question to David or to Neil, who's also with us directly. We would love to hear what you have to say. Oh, great. Hi, everyone. Cool. Hello. Oh, we got a lot of Americans. What's up? I'm here in Pacific, California. David is in Denver, and we've got Neil and Diane in Auckland. So we're also spanning days and time zones. Right. And it's morning for all of us, but good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are joining us from
Mumbai
now.
as well.
Oh, Mumbai, wonderful. Hello.
We've got someone raise their hands.
Great. Oh, wow. Amazing.
Nice.
We've got folks from everywhere. Okay, so it sounds like everyone's excited and we're all here. I don't want to waste any longer with this wonderful introduction. My name is Savannah Peterson. I'm here to moderate and make sure that things continue to be fun and entertaining for you throughout the course of this. Just as a heads up about what we're talking about today, we're really focused specifically on using Portainer at home and Portainer with Docker. So if you're more on the business and Kubernetes side of things, we're going to cover that a lot less. We are going to provide some resources and a bit of a lightning round at the very end with some final questions, but I just want to manage expectations so we all know what we're here for and we make sure that we can get to all the questions that you have specifically about that. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to both the gentlemen with me. First, real quick, we have Neil Creswell, who is our fabulous CEO and joins us with some consistency on these video shows. And our superstar VIP community ambassador guest today is David Burgess. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Me too. And I just, as a sidebar, folks, you are in for a treat working with David the last few weeks to get ready for this. He is full of insights and incredibly articulate about them, which is probably why he has been so successful on YouTube. So for those who may not have visited your channel, which I absolutely recommend you go check it out, Diane's going to drop in a link here into the chat as well as into the comments on the replay and on our blog. Talk to us about your channel. What are you doing on the internet?
Well, for about the last 13, 14 months, I've been doing a lot of home server stuff, self-hosting, that kind of thing. There's been a lot of issues with companies having their security breached, or of course everybody's got a profile on you, whether you realize it or not, and a lot of people don't want to kind of eliminate that footprint. And self-hosting is a great way to do that, and that's what I try to help people do: is self-host the services they can to get away from the big companies that they're not comfortable giving their data to.
I love that. So you're a teacher for the tools to take control of your security and a lot of your tech stack, really. So first of all, your story is definitely worth talking about and incredibly inspiring. And so I'd like to start with how you started making YouTube videos. And then I also want to talk about the role that Reddit played. But yeah, how did you get the bravery to do it?
I honestly, I didn't really discover YouTube until 2009, 2010. And I was real big into aquariums and fish and things like that. So I just started uploading videos about my fish that I had at the time. and then it just kind of trailed off. And then I decided, once I got more familiar with YouTube and finding the channels that I liked, I decided I wanted to be like Linus Tech Tips or Jay's 2 Cents or something like that. And so I started doing product reviews, and then I realized that that gets real tedious after a while, and I kind of fell off, but I was doing them just so I could build an audience. The problem was I wasn't really building an audience. I was going through the motions, but I wasn't getting anywhere. Then late 2019, I decided that I wanted to, as I just mentioned, I wanted to get away from, having all of my data out there for everybody to use or take advantage of. Even just doing stuff like self-hosting password managers or my own version of Google Cloud or whatever. I wanted to get into that. And then I discovered Plex. So I made a video about installing Plex on Open Media Vault 4. And then I shared it to Reddit, and there was a gentleman there who then decimated me, told me that I was wasting my time and everybody else's because Open Media Vault 4 was on its way out, and Open Media Vault 5 with Docker was the way things were moving. And he was absolutely right. So that happened in December of 2019. As soon as he kind of got me thinking the right way, as far as forward thinking, I started making Docker videos. And since then, I've seen real consistent growth on my channel, about 1,500 subscribers a month, give or take. And I've started building a community of people who show up in my comments regularly, or whether it's saying thanks for the video or even offering new video ideas. Like, hey, I really want to host a new game server for my kid. I don't want him out on public servers. So how do I set up a Minecraft server for him? Or how do I set up a CSGO or a Valheim server? So a lot of my videos come from the community where they ask for certain things, and I try to do the best I can to, when appropriate and when viable, to make videos to help them understand how to do these things, to stay away from a lot of the public facing stuff.
Yeah, I love that you were able to survive a Reddit trolling and actually use that as constructive criticism for what to
Right.
just, if you want to just go ahead and put your favorite emoji in the comments if you've also experienced a serious Reddit troll.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
Yeah.
Welcome
Everyone
to Reddit.
who's worth anything on the internet has been deeply trolled by Reddit, but I love that. And now your community is really a source for your content, right?
It is.
Yeah, how frequently are you making videos, just so people know what to expect?
I try to release 3 videos a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, at about 1:15 to 1:30 Mountain Time. I am thinking, however, and of course somebody's going to hold me to this, I'm thinking about switching out one of those days to, or one of those video days to do a live stream for an hour, hour and a half, so I can get some more engagements, direct interaction with my audience, I think that would be a good way to kind of balance things out as far as how often I'm creating content, but then actually engaging more directly with my audience.
Yeah, I love that. And it's building a community as like we're doing with you and with everyone who's here. Thank you again for joining us today, everyone, both listening as well as David. It's just so powerful. So how did this lead you to using Docker and Portainer?
Well, so originally, like I mentioned, I had installed Plex and Open Media Vault. Open Media Vault 4. That was just a single, like, click it, you're done. And then this gentleman on Reddit told me about Docker. I'd heard of it, but I always thought of Docker more as if I wanted to develop an application, I could spin up a Docker container and do it there. I didn't know that Docker could be used for almost anything, it seems like these days. And as I started going through, I used to spend a lot of time, in fact, I still spend a fair amount of time on hub.docker.com, looking up different images and containers and things like that there. Then I discovered a development group called Linux Server. They do a lot of really great stuff, and I use a lot of their containers on my home server. I've done a lot of tutorials talking about their different containers and things like that. As well as other development or developers that are out there that are doing different things. But once I really discovered how lightweight a Docker container can be, how fast you can spin one up, and how versatile they can be, my whole entire home server is set up on Docker now, because I can manipulate things so easily, whether it's through the command line or of course via Portainer. If I want to see the user interface on how to do something, I really enjoy being able to do all of those different things using Docker and Portainer.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more? You've talked about it, a lot of different applications and ways that you help people. Can you tell us a little bit more about your stack specifically and what's got you excited?
Yeah, so recently I did a video where I'd set up, it was a 4-part video where I talked about setting up a home media server using a single stack to deploy, I think it was 11 containers in Portainer. And then it was shortly after that I started really understanding how to use like a single container as a VPN connection to then run other containers through it as an extra level of protection when going out on the internet and connecting with other things via these containers. And once I was able to figure out how to do that, that was a big eye-opening moment for me, because there are certain times like I don't want all of my public data, whether it's my password manager or whatever. If I'm connecting to that, I don't want it to be on clear text. I don't want it to be non-encrypted. So that's been real exciting for me, is being able to connect as many containers as I want to a single VPN container on my system, and just know that all of my data is as safe as it can be running through an encrypted service like that.
Yeah, that's gotta be a relief. How much safer do you feel now than when you started doing this? Just even
I honestly, I'd say about 50% safer. And that's only because whenever possible online, I don't know I know one password, and that's to get into my password manager. But I don't know any of my other passwords. I let my password manager handle all of that. I use 2-factor authentication as much as I possibly can to make sure that even if somebody does leak a password or something, that they'll then have to have my phone, as long as they don't figure out how to hijack my phone number, because I know that that's happened. But just knowing that I've got as much protection available to me as possible in that regard really makes me feel good. I also use Cloudflare for my DNS, which also gives me the ability to use SSLs. They issue free SSLs for your subdomains or your domains, whichever you're using. And if you're using them to point your domain name or your subdomain to your home IP, it obfuscates your IP address. So if somebody were to ping, your whatever subdomain or whatever domain you're using, they're going to get a Cloudflare IP, not your home IP address. So there's a lot of those things that I use very regularly to do everything I can just to protect my containers, my internet. And then I've also got a Unify router that's got a built-in firewall that also gives me a lot of peace of mind, knowing that it's doing a good job of intrusion prevention and things like that.
Yeah, you've made a video about this, right? How to secure your setup?
I did. At the time, I didn't actually have the Unify device, but I did make a video about making sure that you're as secure as possible. Again, using Cloudflare, making sure that you're using reputable container or using containers from reputable developers, which is again one of the reasons I really try to stick with Linux server containers as much as possible, because I know they're good at what they do. So I actually have made a video about how to try to stay as safe as you possibly can while doing your own self-hosting.
Yeah, we'll have Diane actually drop that into the comments right now. We had some specific questions about how you use Portainer and Docker to protect your home server, and they recently, unfortunately, had their Raspberry Pi hacked. Do you have any specific tips for them off the cuff?
I would be curious about how they got in. Like you mentioned, we've been kind of having these meetings to prep for this. And I feel like there was probably a good chance, as Neil mentioned in one of those meetings, that they may have exposed their Portainer to the internet, which, unless you've got some kind of additional security on that, is a really bad idea. But I would be curious about how they got hacked, as far as what method was used to make that happen. And of course, don't use the same password for everything is another big thing. Use a complicated password, especially if you're going to have things exposed. and do whatever you can to protect your system. One of the things I do plan on making a video on very soon is how to enable and set up and whatever with a service called fail to ban. It's part of Open Media Vault, but I know that you can also set that up as a Docker container. And I want to take a look at both of those and possibly make a video on how to help secure your system using fail to ban, hopefully here pretty soon.
Yeah, and you already have some videos on using Open Media Vault on a Raspberry Pi. And
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I do. So one of the reasons I really wanted to touch on that is because I wanted to show that you don't have to have a data center. You don't have to have, $1,000 worth of old parts. If you can afford a Raspberry Pi, you can get into self-hosting, and there are a lot of really great resources out there that are available. Open Media Vault, Docker, Portainer, they're all available on Raspberry Pi. A lot of the most all of the Linux server containers are compatible with Raspberry Pi and desktop and whatever. So I really wanted to show that you don't have to have a big expensive system to get into self-hosting. You can do it with just the bare minimum and let that grow with you as you need it to.
So speaking of that system that you've grown,
Mm-hmm.
Pat, what is it that has made Portainer your tool of choice to do this?
So there's, like I mentioned earlier, the user interface is very intuitive. The folks at Portainer have done a great job at their documentation. If you've got questions, there's always a good area to find that in the wiki. As far as if you got questions about things, of course, the community out there. Like I said, I got started with Docker and Portainer because of the community. It was the community that pointed me this direction, and I feel like I've been able to build my community on the shoulders of Docker and Portainer because it's easy to use, it's easy to understand. You don't have to know command line. I encourage you to learn command line, but you don't have to know command line to get into self-hosting if you're going to use Docker and Portainer. You can do most of that just with the interface. And there's so many good resources. I honestly think one of my favorite things about Portainer, besides its ease of use, is the logs. Being able to see why a container didn't launch, why the container crashed, whatever the case is, being able to go back and look through the logs and be able to troubleshoot that and fix it for later. I actually ran into a situation this morning where I've got a Discord bot, that does announcements for me automatically based on when I publish things, whether it's on my YouTube channel or my blog or whatever, but also requires users when they first join to agree to the rules. And my bot crashed yesterday on my server. And when I went back and looked through the logs, I realized that it was down, but it didn't restart because I hadn't set the restart properties for that, or the conditions for restart or whatever. It was just don't restart. I realized that was all my problem, that I was able to see in Portainer that, I didn't have my container configured correctly. And it took less than 30 seconds to realize that, fix it, and now the bot works just fine again.
Oh, that's great. That we actually had a very specific question from Peter, if you're with us in the audience today, about that, using Portainer logs and understanding them and debugging containers. Do you have a video on that by chance, or maybe there's one in the future that folks could?
So the video that I released yesterday was about something called Tandoor recipes. And one of the things that we had talked about in some of these previous meetings was that I do leave mistakes in my videos, and I didn't used to, but then I realized if I'm making these mistakes, other people are going to make these mistakes, I hope. But so in my video yesterday, both of the containers came up just fine, but the application wouldn't start. And I realized it's because the application started before the database started. And I was able to see that in the logs. And I left all of that in the video I released yesterday about Tandoor recipes, if you want to check that out.
Great. We'll get a link to that video in the comments. Thanks to our very own Vanna White down there, Diane. Thank you. That is excellent. You are so full of information. Actually, since you're just on a hot roll, are there any other? We had a couple of community questions, just wanting to learn from you since you seem so versed and you're so good at teaching. Are there any other tips or tricks that you'd like to share that are maybe your favorite that leverage Portainer, or times you found that it was really great to have?
You know, the thing for me, the way I learned, and the way I encourage a lot of people to learn when you're getting into this, especially if you've got a Raspberry Pi laying around, just set it up and break it and figure out how it broke, figure out how you managed to break it and what went wrong. Look at the logs. Don't be afraid to break it because it's just code. It's not the end of the world. So get in there, break stuff, figure out what breaks stuff, figure out what doesn't break stuff. You know, if you've got the ability to set up a couple of different virtual machines, I've actually got a few of those running on a new device that I just got recently, so that I can spin it up and I can break as much as I want, and then I can go back to a saved state where it's not broken. And I think that's probably for me, that was the way I learned. I learned by breaking things and then figuring out how to fix them.
I like it. And you might as well learn if you've broken it. So
yeah.
No other choice once it's broken. No other choice.
Right.
I feel like I feel like that's definitely something we can all relate to. Again, I want to remind everyone, I see that we've got some new guests here that have joined since we started, and you are more than welcome to drop questions or comments into the chat. We are paying attention. We will follow up afterwards. If you're watching this recording, we welcome all of these, and we encourage you to check out David's YouTube channel.
You can also raise your hand if you want to ask a question live with voice.
And that could get you a limited edition Portainer tee. So, you know, don't be bashful. Don't be bashful, folks. We are, you know, we're probably about 10 minutes away from really opening it up. If you want to jump on, if you're feeling really zealous or you have a time constraint, feel free to jump on right now. We'll welcome you. Of course, everybody is welcome. Okay. So this is kind of a question for both Neil and for David. And it's building on the security thing, but this is a really important part. So I'm not trying to be repetitive. I think this is just invaluable. So the question from Martin, thank you, Martin, if you happen to be here in the audience or watching the replay, is how are you using Portainer to keep security and updates current?
Sure. So I actually use a container called Watchtower. And the great thing about Watchtower is you can use it in primarily one of two ways, I think. One is that you can just set up Watchtower to go out there and look for updates, apply the updates, clean up your system, and your day just goes on. Or probably the way you should do it is set up Watchtower to go out and look for updates and then send you an email to let you know that there is a new update available for that container, so that you can then go take a look at their release notes, their updates, their patches, whatever the case may be, and decide if that's a good update for you to install at that point, and then go through the update process rather than just letting Watchtower kind of manage your system. There are just too many things that could go wrong in a situation like that, where it just automatically does everything without you knowing what's going on. So I definitely, I use Portainer, or not Portainer, I use Watchtower for that. I know that there are other services that will do the same thing. Watchtower was the first one I gravitated to and set up on my system. And now it just checks all my containers once a week. And it used to just go on a heyday, but Docker's switched the amount of polls you can have per day. And so I've just once a week, I have my system go out and look for updates and let me know what's available and what needs to be done.
It's also important to keep Portainer up to date too. So we are often releasing fixes for security. These are sometimes risks that have been explained to us by community. They're also risks that we found ourselves internally. So yeah, whenever we push a new version of Portainer, we encourage you to look at our release notes and upgrade it if there are any issues there around security.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. We've got our last question about the present, and then we're going to start looking a little bit into the future, which is kind of cool. So since, well, this is kind of fun for both of you. I'm going to ask David first, and then Neil, if you have anything to augment, this is a fun. David, what would you say is the best way to learn Docker and Portainer? Obviously, besides the wonderful content that you've created, are there any other YouTube resources, blogs? And we know you like to break things, but maybe in addition to breaking and fixing, which I love, which is great. Vladimir, thank you for this question. Is there any other forum besides Reddit? It seems like there's a lot of ways to get a little lost in the beginning, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually started my research originally on Reddit, but that's not the ideal place in my opinion, just because it can be a very challenging thing to overcome as far as the people that are concerned. But there are a ton of creators online, whether it's on on YouTube or wherever, who are making some really great content on how to set up a Docker server, how to install Portainer, how to do different things with containers. There are a lot of different video creators out there, but there are a ton of people who don't feel comfortable on camera but still want to share their experience, and they write blog posts instead. I try to do a bit of both. I slacked for about 4 months, so I've got 4 months of videos I need to go back and write blog posts for. So I definitely need to do that. But there are a ton of blogs out there and videos out there, entire YouTube channels dedicated to that kind of thing. And I think if you're looking through my analytics on YouTube, that a lot of my videos get added to playlists for other people who are just kind of building their own collection of videos for how do I do this thing. So definitely look for those kinds of playlists that are out there for whether, and not just for my content. There's a lot of great creators out there who are making similar content or better content or whatever, that have got a lot of really good insights on different ways to manage a Docker server rather than just, I'm a guy that just runs a single server in my home that does great for what I'm doing, but maybe you want to look at Kubernetes or Rancher or something like that. That I don't specialize in that. That's not me. That's not my niche. So there's definitely people out there who can help, whether it's through blog posts or videos or whatever the case may be.
Excellent. We'll be sure and throw in a little resource. Actually, if anyone attending has a favorite resource that they like, or even a favorite piece of content from David, or heck, even from our team, we'd be happy to share that. Whatever tools are helping you, we always want to know. Okay, now this is fun because it's a conversation we have internally a bit, and I know we all have a lot of feelings about it, and you've recently surveyed about this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion about the future of Docker. What is your hot take?
I don't think Docker is going anywhere. If anybody in fact, I know there's some people in here from my audience who are part of the survey that I asked, do you think Docker is going anywhere? And I got about 400 responses, and about 80% of people are convinced Docker is not going anywhere. And I'm inclined to agree with that. Like I mentioned, there's Kubernetes, there's Rancher, there's Podman. There's a lot of other services out there that you could use if it fits your needs. And that's what's great about these services being there, is you're not locked into one thing. You can go out and try different things and figure out what works best. It's not like there's just one car out there. One car wouldn't work. One year, make and model, it wouldn't work. So there are other options out there that you can try to see what works best for your hosting needs, your server needs, whatever the case is. So while I'm glad that there are other things coming and being developed and gaining some traction, I don't think Docker is going to go anywhere anytime soon at this point.
Yeah, I agree. The Docker desktop, they are really focusing on the developer experience and still pushing out the Docker Community Edition engine. I think that's here for the long run. I can't see that going anywhere soon.
Sure.
And we have a blog post on rootless Docker. There's always a hype curve of something new in town, and that new thing in town can be really amazing and also incredibly useful. In this case, Kubernetes is, but it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be other players in the game. So safe to say for the foreseeable future, you see yourself using Docker and Portainer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't imagine at this point needing anything else. It's not to say that I won't explore those things and maybe even make content about those things, but I think for my server, for my daily use, I've actually got two servers. One I'm getting in the process of decommissioning, but I've got two servers over here, both running Docker, both running Portainer, and that's just kind of my go-to. It's my comfort zone, and it's what works for me.
That's great. We love hearing that also. We didn't pay David to say that, but that was really convenient. Martin, I'm glad you were in here and we were able to answer your question on keeping things secure. That's fantastic. And thanks for sharing what you're using as well. Love seeing that in the comments. Also, just want to take a real sweet moment. James, I hope I'm not embarrassing you right now, but this is something definitely worth sharing, David. So James writes, he lost his job due to the pandemic in June, and through you and others, he has been able to enhance his skill set and opened what he's looking to do in his technology career next. He says, well done, David, and thank you to the Portainer team for a great software application.
James, really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, James, you're a sweetheart. Thank you for sharing that. And David, look, this is just what you were talking about, your lovely community,
right?
saying nice things about, we're not Reddit.
Right, yeah. James is actually a moderator in my Discord. So yeah, no, James is a great guy.
There's actually a question on a technology crowd sec. I'd never heard of that before. I'm going to have a look at that. Have you seen that one? It says it's a replacement for fail to ban.
No, I'm definitely going to have to keep that in my notes because that's intriguing. Let me put that down here.
I love it how we can learn stuff new every day.
Right. That's why I do this, is because I'm not. Here's the thing. I'm gonna probably shoot myself in the foot here. I'm still learning as I'm going. Right. I am not 100% proficient in any of this. I'm still learning as I'm going. And one of the reasons I like to teach is because it helps me reinforce in my own brain. If I can explain it to you in a way that makes sense, then I think I've got it figured out enough to feel comfortable in giving that delivery. So a lot of my teaching is to help me retain that information as well.
Well,
they say you don't know something until you can teach it, right? Isn't
right.
there some sort of trite thing about that? But I really think it's true. Yeah, I'm here with you on that. Yeah, and DB Techies for the win. Oh, your community even knows their name. That's so fabulous. We welcome all the DB Techies, for the record. Welcome to the Portainer family. If you weren't already here, we give you a big virtual socially distanced hug or high five, depending on your level of touch that you prefer. Totally understand.
Do I want to bring in Charles? You wanted to talk. If you still do, raise your hand and I'll bring you in to ask you a question if you want.
Oh, we've got one from.
It does. Here we go. Hang on. Allow to talk.
Yeah, we've got a couple questions coming in from the audience. Push deep, don't worry.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, Charles. How you going?
Hey, so I just had a question about Portainer specifically, not kind of like a feature request almost type of deal. But I wouldn't mind seeing maybe some sort of way to kind of better manage volumes. I don't know if that would be even possible, or even see if volumes, how much a volume is taking up data wise.
Yeah, I'd love to. We are limited by what the Docker API returns, and it does not return any details around that. The only way we can do that is potentially using the volume browser feature, which is already there, which lets us talk directly to the host, and then we can potentially do Linux commands to try and determine that. So I will take that on board and see what we can do, but it would have to be an agent-only feature, because the agent is how we have access to the physical host file system. But absolutely, yeah. And by the way, in the Kubernetes, you can actually return volume usage. So this just shows some of the deltas between where Docker is and where Kubernetes is in regards to features. So already Portainer with Kubernetes will show you data used inside of volume, and set quotas as well.
Okay, cool.
Are you Docker Swarm or something else?
Docker, and then I'm shortly moving to Docker Swarm.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, so that with Docker Swarm, you can use our agent, and the agent will give you the volume browser functionality. I've actually got a YouTube video on that one, how to use our volume browser. But that just shows you what you can do with that one, uploading, downloading files through Portainer directly into your volumes. And that we can probably enhance to show space used.
Cool, thanks.
All good.
Love it. Thank you, Charles. Think we might have one more question for you regarding your shirt size in your DMs for one of those limited editions, for having the bravery of stepping up to the plate to ask a question to the group. Thank you very much. Pushdeep, I think you actually have a couple questions here that we can ask. I'll ask the one you had today, and then I think you actually sent, or well, no, excuse me. These are going to tie into each other. Never mind. Thank you for your questions. Hi, David. With so many running microservices and so many logs getting generated, how do you manage the observability?
That's actually something I hadn't thought too much about, but I guess I don't do too much in the logs unless I need to. Periodically, I'll just go check and see if there's anything that looks weird or whatever. But most of the time, the only time I really check the logs is if there's an issue or when things are starting up and I'm trying to monitor what's going on. Those are kind of the only 2 times that I really get into the logs. For the rest of the time, I've got a Telegram bot set up on my server that tells me if something has changed on my server so that I can get notifications whether I'm at home or not. So I try not to, for the most part, I try to stay out of the logs as much as possible, just because I feel like I would overwhelm myself and just I think I would focus too much on it, and I think it would just drain me emotionally to just sit and watch the logs all the time. So unless there's something going on or I'm trying to see what a certain container is doing, I just try to stay out of the logs unless I need to.
Neil, do you want to chime in there? Because I know there's a little bit of, there were some questions about Grafana as a way of monitoring. And David, I know that you actually, was it you who said that you were getting Telegram notifications when things change on your server? Yeah.
And I've actually got a video about how to set up Grafana with Node Exporter and that sort of thing on my channel. If you do want to know a lot of those details, it'll tell you, everything from how much CPU usage you've got to how much RAM you're using, storage, things like that. So that's definitely a way that you can quickly figure out what's going on your server if you just kind of want a big picture there.
We've got a bunch of new features coming in this year in regards to monitoring, alerting, performance monitoring. So some of those will be usable down at the Docker standalone host level. So keep your eyes peeled for changes.
Excellent. Ooh, hello, Pedro. Thank you for your question. I'd like to ask a question about Portainer project. Do you plan to add some features to connect Portainer with NAS services such as free NAS, true NAS to store volumes and images?
Let me just correct you. It's NAS, not NAS. It's just NAS. NAS.
I mean, I'll take it. I'm always learning.
Inside Portainer, in the volume section, there is already the ability to add NFS or CIFS volumes. So we have attempted as much as we can to simplify that stupidly complicated process to create a CIFS or NFS mount inside Docker. That's probably about as far as we'd go in that regard. So you obviously need to have the backend NFS and CIFS configured. And then inside Portainer, it's click, and you've got those mounted to a container. So if that's not far enough, do let me know. My email's always open, so you can email me with your ideas, and we can see what we can do to make that easier.
I love it. That's great. See, always open for feature suggestions here. Actually, curious in the comments, is everyone here a home user? Do we have a couple business users? We noticed in our registrants, we had a little bit of a spread. So if anyone feels like sharing, please do. We do have time for a few more questions today. Looks like mostly home users. That's fun. I love the Telegram tip. Actually, I use Telegram a lot. Is that your preferred messaging platform? This is a little bit of a sidebar, David, but I'm curious.
I don't really have a preferred, I don't talk to a lot of people. Most everything I do is in, if I'm doing something, will be like in Discord or Slack, Facebook Messenger to keep in touch with family, things like that. But I honestly, I just signed up for Telegram for the bot so that I could get notifications there. So that was my entire reason for signing up for that.
Awesome. Well, it's my preferred.
I'm loving seeing this. David got me and the company I work for interested in Docker and Portainer. Winning.
That's cool.
Right.
David, you're a gateway. You're a gateway
for
us. This is brilliant. We love it. We love it. All right. Do any of our other attendees have questions? Because something that I want to actually, I'm curious. Well, I'm just going to say this because I'm a creator like you are, David. And I think your creator journey is really interesting because I'm sure some folks are learning skills from you. Obviously, maybe they're taking inspiration. Maybe they even might want to do some YouTube videos of their own. You started creating videos to strengthen your voice.
I did. Yeah. So,
and not just your metaphorical voice.
No, literally. No, you're absolutely right. So I originally started my channel in 2009 to share my fondness of fish. In fact, if you've been watching me for a while, you'll notice that there's a new aquarium back here in the background that I'm glad to have back there. I was into fish for a long time. I started making videos about them. And then that kind of fell off. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I decided I wanted to be a new Linus Tech Tips or Jay's 2 cents. And I realized I wasn't that guy. And then in 2016, I got sick. I got the flu and I went to the doctor and they did some tests. And then they found out that I had cardiomyopathy, which is an enlargement of the heart. Which, as it turns out, if you go to the quick care, that's an immediate trip to the emergency room and you don't get a say in the matter. So that happened. In fact, it was February 23rd of 2016. So 2 days ago was the anniversary for that. So I went to the hospital on February 23rd and I finally got to go home July 12th. So I was in the hospital that whole time. During that process, I was in and out of 4 medically induced comas. They gave me 2 different tracheotomies. I was intubated. So as a result of that, of the tracheotomies and the intubations and all of that, my voice basically became down to nothing. I was squeaky. I had no projection. I couldn't communicate very well at all. And one of my vocal therapists came in and she found out that I like to do YouTube videos. So she would have me review products that she would bring in as a way to put me in a comfort zone and give me something to work towards. So after I got home out of the hospital, I started doing what I could to build my voice. And I found that doing YouTube videos was a consistent way to do basically physical therapy for my voice 3 days a week. And so I started doing that. And I know I shared with you guys yesterday via email that video where my voice is very, very different now than it was 5 years ago. So I started getting more back into YouTube even more because it was a way for me to communicate and do the vocal exercises I needed to do to get my voice back to where it is now, really.
Oh, very cool. I actually prefer the voice now than the one 5 years ago. It's far more distinctive.
I absolutely agree. It still weirds me out to go back and watch that video. In fact, if you watched it, what nobody knew as I was recording that, I was very, very sick in that video. And that's why I felt bad for so long, is because I was really sick and just didn't know it. But yeah, no, actually, I don't encourage anybody to get intubated and have tracheotomies. It's not a good time. Waking up from a coma and having a big hole in your throat is eye-opening, to say the least. But if you're looking for a good vocal change, have at, I suppose.
You've got a wonderful sense of humor about it. But
thanks.
I think it's inspiring. And I think just getting out there and trying, you really showed one foot in front of the other, one sub in front of the other. And now look at your little DB techies, not little, it's quite large, actually. That's the wrong word. Look at your beautiful DB techies community. It is super powerful. Yeah. Ooh, looks like Ed has a question for us. Ed, thank you so much for chiming in. He uses zerotier.com to access his self-hosted stuff at home. It's so simple to set up when I'm out. Is this secure enough? Or would you suggest another more complicated method like self-hosted, OpenVPN, port forwarding with dynamic DNS, etc.? What are your thoughts?
Really, the most secure way, in my opinion, if you really wanted to lock things down, would be to access all of your stuff. If you're out and about on your phone, on a laptop, whatever, I really think the most secure way to handle that is having your own VPN that puts you back on your network, and then your containers only accept connections from an internal IP address on your network. That can be complicated to set up, but I feel like that's probably the most secure way that you can do it if you need to be able to remotely access. I don't know much about zero tier, so I don't want to say anything that's off base. I don't know anything about them. But again, I use Cloudflare to hide my IP address and manage my DNS, issue SSLs, things like that. So I don't know if I actually answered anything there, but I think OpenVPN or having a VPN connection is probably the most secure way to do that, because then you're only able to access your containers from an internal IP address on your network.
Yeah, I agree. For my own personal home lab, it is behind a VPN, and the only way I can get to it is VPN. I have it's an always-on VPN, so my laptop is always connected to that VPN anyway. And so for me, I don't even know that I'm home or remote.
Sure.
So that works for me.
Good. All right. Anyone else feeling bold and brave or want to add?
I see actually Charles has asked a question related to that. What's your favorite VPN client to host?
OpenVPN for me.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing that I use is OpenVPN. I believe there's something new coming out, or that's starting to take over a little bit. And I cannot think of the name of it off the top of my head.
You see some comments here, NordVPN and WireGuard.
WireGuard is the one I was thinking of. That's supposed to be a lighter resource, does the same thing as OpenVPN. It's just apparently lighter and easier to set up. So either OpenVPN or WireGuard are kind of the go-to standards at this point.
Excellent. All right. Anyone else feeling brave or like they need a new?
Ryan, you've raised your hand. I'm going to invite you to talk now.
Great. Hi, Ryan. You're muted, just FYI.
Amazing.
That photo is epic.
David, I was wondering, when you've got front ends like Portainer with back ends that you're managing, maybe you've got one or two, like maybe you've got the Flex Media console and things like that all on one host. How do you manage? Is there like a portal that you use to manage multiple front ends, or do you have it in like your bookmarks? How do you keep them all sorted?
That's a good question, because trying to remember all of those different ports is tedious. So there are several dashboards that are available. Trying to remember. So I'm trying to remember the one I actually just set up. I've used Heimdall, I've used Homer. There are several dashboards available that you can use that basically, it's like a bookmark system that just shows up as a web page. And again, if I could remember, let me see.
Organizer is what James is saying.
Yeah, thank you, James, and Neil for that. Yeah, no, Organizer is the one I use that I've started using recently because it allows me to connect directly to MB and Sonar and Jacket and all of the different containers that I've got. So it will actually open a lot of those interfaces on the same page, as long as there's a good way to integrate through an API. And in fact, in that 4-part video series that I made recently about how to set up a home server, one of the things I covered was Organizer and how to connect to things like MB and Jacket and Sonar and Radar and all of those, so that you've just got a quick glance dashboard, as well as bookmarks that you can click through and have access to all of your different containers.
And Charles
Awesome.
said
Thank you so much.
There's one called
Welcome.
Dash Matchin and Dash Matchin. No idea how to pronounce that.
It's Dash Machine. I
Machine,
I used that. I used that for quite a while until my home server video came out, and I realized how much I really like Organizer, just the way it seamlessly integrates with so many of the services I use.
Cool. Anybody else keen to ask questions? Feel free. You get a chance to talk direct.
And Ryan now also gets a Portainer t-shirt that he can wear on his next hike, which I believe was that a dog in your back, Ryan? Please chime in the comments. It looked like a dog on your backpack there in that zoom shot.
Actually, if David just stands up, he can be the perfect model for the Portainer t-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
let me do that. There we go.
There we go.
There
Look
it
at
is. Yeah. I love that it's right here on the side versus directly in the middle. Just it's a little different, and I really dig that.
It's a pug, apparently, Sav.
Oh, yay, a little older pug. That's too cute. They can still hike. Mine's over here in the living room. Okie dokie, this is your last opportunity for an exclusive video question with David Burgess and Neil for this session. We will keep an eye on the comments for those of you watching the replay, and we will make sure that if you say really nice things about David as a result, like you have in the chat here, that we pass those on to him. We are very excited to let you know that this is now becoming a proper series for Portainer. So our next event is going to be held around this time at the end of March. We will be with, Tobias Tobias, forgive me, I'm apparently not doing good on the names today, but he is joining us from Germany. He is one of our German community members and another ambassador. So we'll have a similar situation. We'll give you a little more background on him in between now and then, so you have the opportunity to submit your questions. If you haven't, because you've been so enthralled by this chat, yet subscribed to DB Tech on YouTube, you must, because clearly David is full of information, and it seems like most of y'all are actually already in his community, which is a really fantastic overlap. David, is there anything else that you would like to share? Anything advice for folks who are maybe starting out and feeling a little frustrated right now? Some words of inspiration?
I think it would just be kind of, what we've talked about before. Don't be afraid to break things. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Just know your audience when you're asking questions, because there are certain communities out there that are just more supportive than others. Let's put it that way. And so know your audience. I've actually got a Discord server where I've got several people in there answering questions regularly. So don't be afraid to jump into a Discord server, into comment sections. I'm real active in my comment sections on my YouTube channel. I used to do a thing where I would try to answer every question, but I was only able to do that until I hit about 15,000 subscribers, and beyond that, it's too much. But don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to do research. Don't be afraid to break things. Don't be afraid to start small. If you've got a Raspberry Pi and you want to learn, then spin up an Open Media Vault system or a Docker system on your Raspberry Pi, and just try whatever you want to try, because that's the only way you're going to learn. Is if you don't start, you're never going to get there. So start wherever you got to start, and just let it and learn as much as you can.
We actually had a question for both of us. What's our most used application that we use on Docker? For me, it's Droppy. Just lets me share files randomly with people. I can upload file for large files, and this is because I'm frequently having to email large files around, and the easiest way is throw it up on Droppy and get a link, and people can get it. Unfortunately, that being, as with many open source projects, the owner has ceased development. So I need to find a replacement. But for me, Droppy. But how about you, David?
For me, honestly, it's Emby. We've almost always got something streaming on a TV in our house, whether it's for us or for the kid or for background noise or whatever. I think Emby probably gets used the most in my house. I'd say a second runner-up to that would be Nextcloud, for backing up my phones and keeping notes, things like that. Those are probably the two biggest ones that I use on a regular basis.
Great.
Cool.
Well, on that note, Neil, David, Diane, thank you three for making this magic happen today. To Charles and to Ryan, who had the bravery for stepping in and asking a question IRL. We really appreciate that. And equally as much, don't worry, we don't only reward extroverts. We thank everyone who chimed in over here, especially given the wild time of day that it is in some of your regions of the world. It means a lot to everyone here on the team that you all communicate with us and attend this. And we're always eager to make these as fun and as interesting as possible. So we welcome your feedback. We do them for you. And we hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day or evening, depending on your time zone.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing future interviews or shows, or however you want to classify these. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the series.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye for now.
All right.
See ya.